everyone. It is Wednesday, so it is time for a new episode of Weekend Reading. As you can tell, I am trying this from a new location, not far from the old location. It was actually just right over there. But I've decided I wanted to sit somewhere slightly more comfortable when I do this, so here we are. As for what Weekend Reading is, it is every Wednesday, new comic book day. I decide to talk about what I will be reading what I read last weekend. I'll go over what I read last weekend, and I'll be talking about what I'll be reading in the upcoming weekend, and I will also pose a question or go over an abandoned plot line, or maybe if I come up with something else. I'm starting to run out of those little things, so maybe I'll come up with something else to talk about. But there'll always be a little third thing that I'll go into that just comes into my mind. So whatever's on my mind will be the third thing. So let's get right into it. What did we have last week? Well, last week we read Seven to Eternity, Volume 4, The Springs of Zal, which was okay. I liked the whole series overall. The writing was, pardon me, the writing was decent. The characters were good, and the art was fantastic. But this was the end of it. This is the last issue, the last volume, and the end of the whole series. And I found the conclusion a little lackluster. I want to say disappointing, but I don't mean disappointing in the quality of the writing. I mean disappointing in that I just didn't like it. It was decent, but it just felt like so very on the nose. You're hoping that with a story about a character who everybody thinks bad things about, they're going to overcome it. You don't see a lot of stories where they just end up leaning exactly into what everyone thinks of them, and you realize that it's not a hero's journey, it's a villain's journey. But that's really what it is. And I guess in a way it, kind of makes a commentary on the sort of shakiness of morality, the fine line between good and evil, and how you can think someone who might be good can actually end up being very bad. That it's all just ends up being decisions. It's not really about whether a person's good or bad. It's just the choices they make. But it still just felt a little disappointing in the end anyways. I guess I wanted better for the main character. So, yeah, it was good, but it wasn't my favorite. My favorite of this week, well, the other read I had was Eternals, Volume 1, Only Death is Eternal. This one was my favorite of the week. This was a very good read. It was good writing by Kieran Gillen and great art by Esad Rabik. The Eternals are a very complicated group of characters, and it feels like they're starting fresh with them this time, which is good. It actually starts with one of the main Eternals, Icarus, sort of waking up in their resurrection chamber. Apparently, he's the last of the Eternals to be resurrected. They all recently died off, relatively recently died off not too long ago in their most recent run of the Avengers. Actually, in their first volume, The Final Host, the Eternals were kind of mentioned as having all killed each other. You'd have to read that volume to understand why, but they all sort of went temporarily crazy and killed each other. Now they've been brought back, as is an ability they have. They can be brought back to life, and it starts with Icarus, who is, like I said, the last one of them to be brought back to life this time. The first thing Icarus does is he talks to the Eternals leader, Zurus, who he's the Prime Eternal, the leader of them on Earth, and he basically tells Icarus that he has to they've decided to resurrect another Eternal named Sprite. Sprite has been they have a way of locking people, they have a way of locking Eternals away after they're resurrected if they need to be quarantined from the group for their previous actions, and Sprite needed that to happen to him because actually, he used to be a he, now he's a she. I think that's because of the movie. At least I thought he was a he. Maybe he was always a she. So Sprite, she has been brought back, pardon me, because in an even older Eternals miniseries by Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr., she basically used the power of the Eternals and the Celestials to rewrite reality and make all the Eternals mortal and forget that they were Eternals. And at the end, Zurus killed her for it. So she's been locked away since then. But now she's come back, and all the other Eternals are nervous about her. What makes her even more nervous, and she runs off for a little bit, and Icarus and Sprite have an encounter with Iron Man to sort of reconnect with the regular Marvel heroes to let them know the Eternals are back. What makes things even worse is that Zurus ends up dead. He ends up murdered, and nobody's quite sure who did it. But everybody's suspicious of everybody. They sort of kind of meet like all the main Eternals. There's like 100 Eternals, but there's a core group of main characters. There's like Icarus, Sprite, Druig, Fasto, Thena, Circe. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Kingo, and even later, Agamemnon, who's also known as the Nameless Eternal. But they're all trying to put together this mystery of who killed Zurus and why. But they can just resurrect Zurus, right? Well, problem number one pops up in that Thanos is back. And he obviously becomes the prime suspect of whoever killed Zurus, and he seems to have an ability to teleport through. Like the Eternals have this artificial intelligence that runs their entire society. That basically they refer to as the machine, but it's basically the mind of the Earth itself. It's like the consciousness of the Earth itself, and it's tied in directly to the Earth, and they can teleport anywhere through the machine. But Thanos isn't supposed to be tied in the machine, yet somehow he is, and he's doing it in secret ways that the rest of them don't even know how to do. But it's pretty obvious that Thanos is working for somebody. He has a traitor within the Eternal Myths. It has brought him back and is helping him, because Thanos is supposed to be dead. He was originally killed at the beginning of... what was the name of that miniseries? He was killed, and then he was almost brought back. He was kind of brought back in shit, now it's gonna drive me crazy. What was that miniseries? Was it Infinity Wars? Just a second. Yeah, sorry about that. It was called Infinity Wars. He was killed at the beginning of Infinity Wars by Gamora. Then he was part of a plan he had set in place in case somebody actually managed to kill him. He had a means to resurrect himself. And that was conducted in the first volume of one of the previous iterations of the Guardian of the Galaxy series. They go through so many. They keep restarting that book so much. I believe it was called... Guardians of the Galaxy, Jesus H. Christ. I should really be writing this shit down, shouldn't I? The Final Gauntlet. Yes, he was killed. He was temporarily brought back and then sucked into a black hole at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, The Final Gauntlet. So he was supposed to be dead. But somebody somehow saved him, brought him back, and then gave him the means to teleport through the Eternal system. So, they have conflicts with him. They're still trying to figure out who the traitor is. And then there's also a side story of like Icarus gets a vision of himself mourning over a human child's grave, and he doesn't know why, so he just decided to blindly protect this child. It doesn't seem to connect to the main story at all. It even has Sprite help him. It doesn't seem to make sense at all, but it does make sense at the end of the story in an actually kind of tragic way. They even go into there's even like throughout the whole story, they go into little detail. They give these little like pages of information. They give one about Eternal Society. They even give one about the Deviant Society. They mention them sparingly. They even delve into the past of various Eternal characters to, give you some of their key experiences dealing with each other and deviance and humanity throughout the centuries. It was an interesting story, and like I said, the Eternals are a group of characters that are mentioned here and there, and they're a great idea by Jack Kirby, but they haven't explored that much, and this book seems to be really exploring them a lot. And I know it's because of the movie that the upcoming movie that they want to promote it, but I think it's great that they're doing that because they're an interesting group of characters, and I hope they don't fuck them up the way they did the Inhumans. They eventually do find out who the traitor is and who was working with Thanos, and reveal that there's even more traitors in the group. And I'm not going to give away the ending because I think you should read it, and I don't want to ruin the surprise. And I'm also not going to give away what this human kid has to do with the whole story, but it's kind of important, and it has to do with why the traitor to the Eternals betrayed the Eternals. But it's a great read. It's great art. I'm really looking forward to what this series has to offer, and I hope it keeps going. I hope it remains popular and they're managed to keep going with it because I really liked it. Eternals Volume 1, Only Death is Eternal. That's my favorite of last week. Now, what do we got coming up this week? Well, first off, we have Miles Morales, Volume 5, The Clone Saga. They just dropped the whole Spider-Man part of this. I guess I didn't want to confuse people, but nothing will ever be the same for the Morales family. The battle against Ultimate is over, but Miles and his family will bear the scars for the rest of their lives. A day with Starling may raise Miles' spirits, but there's always another shoe about to drop. Like symbiote dragons attacking Brooklyn. And that's not the worst thing unleashed by the King in Black. Null has taken over one of Miles' friends and is using them to go after the young Spider-Man. If Miles can come out of this ordeal unscathed, he'll face an even greater one when the Assessor's machinations are revealed at last. And Miles' clone saga will mess up his life even worse than Peter Parker's did. Collecting Miles Morales Spider-Man, see, they still do use that title, 22 through 28 by Saladin Ahmed, Cody Ziegler, Carmen Carnero, Natasha Bustos, David Curiel, and Rochelle Rosenberg. This has been a good read, so this should be an interesting one. And then we also have Monstrous, Volume 6, The Vow. War has engulfed the known world, and Micah Halfwolf is at its epicenter. As she and her friends grapple with the consequences of their actions, long-buried secrets and long-awaited reunions threaten to change everything. The 6th volume of Monstrous collects issues 31 through 35, as well as Monstrous Talk Stories 1 and 2, in which Micah and Kippa share the childhood memories that shaped them. As that complicated past collides with the tumultuous present, Micah will have to choose her allies wisely, holding trust and caution in delicate and deadly balance. And this one is by... Oh, they didn't even mention who does it. This one is written by Marjorie Liu, and the art is by Sana Takeda. This has been a good book. It's I love the kind of anime style art. I really, or I guess since it's comic books, it would be manga style art. But yeah, this is going to be a good set of reads this week. Going to be hard to choose the favorite, so we'll see. And now that all that is taken care of, now that I struggled my fucking way through that, we got a question of the week. Okay, the question of the week is, last time I had a question, I asked who is the most overused character in comic books, and it dealt mostly with the big two because they're the ones who reuse characters that much. This one will probably still deal with the big two because it's kind of the opposite question. Who's the most underused character? Who's a character that, seems interesting, seems like could be explored more, but just isn't? That could even be considered groups of characters, because I just talked about the Eternals, and it's like they're a group of characters that pop up every now and then. They have interesting stories, and they've always been part of interesting stories, but they aren't explored that much. There have been attempts to, but they never really panned out. Same with the Inhumans, but they tried to do that with the Inhumans, and it just didn't work. I've mentioned that before, that kind of crashed and burned badly. I'll always go, at least to my personal taste, I'm always going to go to cosmic level heroes. I always feel that, like, when it comes to, like, the wide open universe, there's always more to explore than just the Earth-based stuff. And not to mention the Earth-based characters always get explored more. So I'd probably go with, like, up until recently, the Guardians of the Galaxy were kind of ignored. But they've made valiant attempts with them. I feel that Nova kind of gets left behind too much. There's been attempts at him and, the Nova Corps in general, but they always get pushed to the background. And I feel like that's a waste. Just attempts at Silver Surfer, but that never goes more. I feel like all of the characters connected to Galactus could be explored a bit more, and that could be far more interesting. Or even over on the other side of things, the DC universe. There were attempts to expand on the Green Lantern mythos more, but it kind of fell apart when Jeff Johns stepped away from that book. And I feel like that's sort of it's kind of a waste. So it could be anybody, but who is a character that you feel has a character or a group of characters that you feel have a lot of potential that just aren't explored enough? They're not used, they're not utilized enough. And they could be having much more, they could be doing so much more with them, telling so many great stories with them. It doesn't even have to be that interesting of a character, to be honest. One thing that was proven in the Secret Six miniseries and series in general is that with a character called Catman, who was just a character that was such a fucking joke after his initial appearance, which had been decades before. He proved that you don't have to be it doesn't have to be a good character. You just need a good writer to have the character. Or in when Captain America brought back Bucky. Bucky was such a dumb sidekick character, and they managed to make Bucky cool. And now Bucky's all over the place, even been portrayed in movies and TV shows. So, a good writer can make any character useful. So there's no reason to underutilize any potential character. Any character's potential. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so who do you think is unjustly unused? So yeah, that's the question of the week. My apologies. So yep, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoy your weekend, and I hope you enjoy your reading. Have a good one, folks.